Welcome back to the Final Five. New polling from Ipsos giving us an idea on where voters stand on a whole host of issues, including, yes, the age of our two leading presidential contenders. So when we have issues like this, we want to get the pulse of the people. We go to this guy, Cliff Young from Ipsos, up late with me tonight on the Final Five. Welcome back, my friend.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, all right. So you've been crunching the numbers, getting some ideas of where people stand right now. Are we noticing any big shifts right now in terms of any policies, or is it sort of status quo?
I think it's status quo right now.
Yeah.
You know, public opinion is getting its feet under it right now. We're still 9 months out from the election.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good things to see right now because it will start to shape up in a little bit.
All right, let's do it right now. Let's take a look at some of our numbers we have here. First up, inflation is down, unemployment is down, but consumer confidence hasn't recovered. Consumer confidence is one of those metrics that we talk a lot about, but I don't think we properly understand.
Yeah, what we wanted to show here was basically the official statistics are improving. The economy is improving, but people's perception is still relatively negative or middling, right? And what's going on? Public opinion tends to be a lagging indicator of the economy. It takes a while for it to catch up, especially when we talk about inflation. Inflation had a big impact on people's perception, and there's this sort of inertia, right? Levels are so high, that is, price levels are so high, and people still are counting pennies to make ends meet.
And of course, when we look right here, this is the pandemic. This is where we saw everything spike, and numbers are still sorting out just a little bit. But you mentioned about the perception. There's that idea the perception is reality. I mean, does that stand here?
Well, it stands in relationship to presidential approval ratings, in relationship to voting intention, negative perception of the economy have an impact on those numbers. They don't necessarily correlate with the official statistics at this point.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on to our next batch of numbers here. This one having to do with confidence in future financial situations. We're sort of back to where we were at 44 to 41%. So a lot of fluctuation, but really you get back to the same point here.
Yeah, we just wanted to show here we're at 41% right now when it comes to confidence in the future. That's a sign, a glimmer of hope for the economy and more specifically for the Biden administration. And what we want to do is really emphasize this point that it's not all doom and gloom in the numbers today.
This is from a personal perspective. I think sometimes when people look at what's happening on a national level, whether it be the stock market, whether it be something else, that colors your perception. But then when you look at your own finances, you look at your bank account, I think that really puts things into a bit of a different perspective.
We always find that. We find that here in the United States. We find it around the world. People are more optimistic about themselves than they are about the country.
Well, I think there's something to be said about that. All right, let's move on as we take a look at the majority of Americans as we move into the political realm here. Think both Biden and Trump are too old to serve second terms. There we go. What I think is interesting is you have the 59%, so this might be where you have a bipartisan agreement on that. Much different here, but it's interesting because I don't know. I think you have two candidates. There's only 4 years difference here. They're both the oldest men to ever seek the office.
Yeah, first and foremost, not a good thing to be bipartisan on, I would say, age. Yeah, but definitely Trump is doing much better from an age perspective than Biden. A lot of our other polling suggests that he's just seen as more energetic, more on the ball than Biden specifically, and these numbers reflect that.
Are you surprised that there's 11% that are in the neither category?
Yeah, they're just checked out. There's 10% of the population that are checked out.
We don't care. Let's move on as we look at the younger Americans, Democrats and independents, more likely to believe both Biden and Trump are too old. So this is that 59% we were looking at here.
Yeah, and obviously older people don't think it's the case. They don't think they're too old to be president.
Yeah.
Younger people obviously do. When it comes to Democrats, a pox on both your houses, both Biden and Trump. When Republicans, it's all about Biden.
Yeah. You know, and we've talked about this in other, not you and I, but other guests, when you look at the older Americans who respond to this argument, the ones who are most likely to vote, they're also the ones that see this and think it's not a big deal.
Yeah, they're pretty proximate to the age, right?
Yeah.
So they don't see their own problems potentially, but without a doubt, you're correct.
Moving on, as we look at the opinion surrounding the Her report. This is obviously the one that came down, the special counsel investigation into the documents in President Biden's Delaware home and elsewhere. And you have three categories here: whether he was treated fairly, whether he got special treatment because he was the president, or if he's being mistreated by Robert Hur, who is a Republican appointee.
Yeah, and obviously it's partisan. It's a partisan issue. 71% of Democrats believe that Biden was treated fairly. Only 37% of Republicans. Biden received special treatment. 81% of Republicans.
Wow.
29% of Democrats. And Biden being mistreated by the prosecutor, 50% of Democrats say yes, only 9% of Republicans. A hyper-partisan issue.
Oh, of course.
Very similar to indictments as well. You find the same sort of numbers when it comes to Trump's indictments.
All right, and moving on to Trump outperforms Biden on crime, immigration, and inflation. So they each have their strengths here. I think it's not a surprise when you look at, we've talked about this the last time about the key issues here. Crime usually favors the Republicans, but then when you look at more of the social issues here, that favors the Democrats.
Exactly. Like social issues for Biden, as we can see, healthcare as an example, Biden wins out over Trump. However, inflation, crime, Republicans are a law and order party, and immigration, they all beat them out. The key question obviously will be what is going to be the primary issue going into the 2024 elections. Right now, today, it's the economy, but we don't know what it will be because as the economy improves, other issues will come to the fore.
You know what, when I look at this here, the one thing that surprises me, because again, we cover it a lot, when you look at who doesn't care, the one issue that they really have no preference on comes down to the classified documents, which is the one issue that really both of these candidates have some sort of culpability in.
Yeah, and really people don't know much about it. Well, it's very distant for them.
Really?
Yeah, very distant. Look at that. 41% of Americans really don't have an opinion. They say neither, but it's really very distant and sort of foreign to them.
I'll tell you, next time we talk, I want to get some perspective on the border issue as it pertains to Congress, because clearly that's a whole different issue and how that's being handled.
Yeah, it's going to be a key issue during the election.
Cliff Young joining us here from Ipsos. Great to see you.
Yeah.
We got nailing the handshake now. We're back after this in the Final Five.